featuring a celebration of 30 years of Linux. And we lean on Linux very heavily. We're glad it's there. And here's 4 different little birthday card desktop wallpapers, all from the Linux Foundation, one of the groups that helps Linux to stay competitive and available. I'm glad they gave us these cards, and you'll be able to click and find them, and we'll talk more about them later in the show. Onward. Here is the agenda for the day. It's the draft agenda. Afterward, we'll know how much of it is there and how much is saved for perhaps next month. And I'm going to skip the introductory slide talk because instead we have something for the beginners and everyone else who wants to spread it around that I think is excellent. Let me just say for an introduction that FOSS is free open source software. And that means 2 different kinds of free. First of all, you don't have to pay for it, and that's free. And second of all, for programmers, it's open source, and that means programmers can look at the source code. They can make sure there's nothing nasty in the source code, and that helps the non-programmers. They can lift a piece of the source code to use in their new project.
Can I ask Bob Premack to please, I don't know what's happening, but you're taking over the screen.
I have done nothing that I know of. Let's see. Cancel. That better?
Yep. Well,
I did not do that on purpose. I must have hit a key.
But
Jill, now go down to the bottom and hit.
Dick's on my screen.
Yeah, Dick's on my screen too.
Yeah, it's coming up full screen for me. And
Are you sure I'm not pinned, Jill?
how would I do that? I wasn't touching my screen.
It's coming up fine on the YouTube.
Okay, I got Dick back. Thanks.
There are keyboard shortcuts. Sometimes we inadvertently hit them.
Okay. And you're not seeing me, you're seeing the agenda, correct?
Correct.
Good.
Yes, Jill, if you have a touchpad, those are sensitive.
I think Jill's got it straight now. Thanks. So for beginners, free open source software also allows the programmers to pick up a piece of somebody else's code and reuse it in their project. This saves a lot of time, a lot of debugging, allows people to choose the very best pieces to assemble new projects, and therefore things happen fast. And finally, even the project itself can be copied in full and then branched off into a fork, a version of it that may be better or may be better on some particular computer or what have you. So that's the open source part. Nobody's saying it's proprietary code. And as a result, everything that gets built on it gets shared, or at least almost everything, and gets shared in ways that benefit all of us, especially the non-programmers. So we all can play the game. It's very professional in its most detailed corners, but it's very standard, easy to use computer stuff for the beginner until he starts learning how to do programming. So it's all the above, and it's free. Now, you need an operating system to run it, and the most common one out there is Linux. And this is the 30th birthday celebration for Linux that we're talking about. It's pretty sophisticated by now. How sophisticated? It's so good that it's what almost all the space projects use now. The International Space Station and so much more run on it. They don't run on Windows. They don't run on Mac OS. They run on Linux. And one of those little birthday cards I was showing earlier and we'll show later, is pointing out that it's good enough to use in helicopters on Mars. So this is reliable stuff. They don't want to have to go up and fix it too often. It also works on wristwatches, most of the inexpensive ones you buy these days. And it works on everything in between.
Android phones.
Smartphones, computers, of course. And yes, on the big mainframes. In fact, on the 500 biggest supercomputers in the world, every single one of them is running on Linux. Now you've got an idea of how big and small and friendly and super powerful Linux can be. We're going to take a look at little corners of that package, one example after another, things we can all play with or use, things that are professional but interesting. They might spin off something we all like in a year or two, et cetera, et cetera. That's my introduction, except for one thing. Here it is, Linux for Starters, your guide to Linux. This is not brand new, but it's quite good. And it's there. It's got chapter after chapter. When you click on it, and beginners, you will have these links up online sometime later tonight. So tomorrow or late tonight, you can click and enjoy. And this link will take you to the introduction to a book, and you can just go on through it chapter after chapter. And in fact, if you look around, you'll see where it can lead you to other good tutorials as well. But this one I thought would be really nice for beginners, and therefore I'm not going to go in as deep as I usually do. We have a lot of other things today. On the news, anybody notice what happened on Monday? First, Facebook wasn't working. I couldn't care less, but other people did. And secondly, a lot of other things that are in the same company as Facebook winked out also. Instagram, Twitter, Oculus, for those of you who insist on playing 3D games or do something actually useful with it. And it winked out, and it winked out for about 6 hours. And when it winked out, where am I? That's not what I thought it was. Ooh, am I going to be able to use this? Just a minute. I think it should be up somewhere on my system. That's where good. There we have it. And this winked out in a lot of places. Why didn't it wink out in the other places? I think we don't know for half of them, but places like China don't allow it in the first place now. So some of them are explained by the fact that it never was there, and we'll learn more later. This should be the map from then. So just a minute, I'm looking for a date on it. Tough. It is the date from then because it's all out in the U.S. and most of our local continents and Europe. So that's what hit, or where it hit more accurately. It was done by the folks at Facebook themselves. They host a hell of a lot of servers, and they managed to hit the main one that serves all the other ones and make a minor mistake. And they had to send somebody flying out to California to fix it, apparently. It took a while. First they had to find it, and then they had to go get the right stuff to fix it. So it was an interesting one. My take on it, let me get back to this one. My take on it is I thought that's a good thing. So I'm proposing a no Facebook, Instagram, Oculus, Twitter Monday. We can run it once a month, and it'll be a time for people to do something more useful and get smart.
Except I was in the middle of a free cycle transaction, and the person couldn't reach me to tell me that she was coming late.
the Facebook giveth and the Facebook taketh away. But in any case, it was interesting because it affected so much of the net. Now,
And there was backsplash elsewhere as everybody moved to their backup Twitter account to ask if Facebook was down or to reconnect with people. And DNS was getting hammered looking for the missing records as people hit refresh.
right. And my main link on here, when it goes on late tonight, is going to be one from Cloudflare. Cloudflare maintains its own sets of servers, and it also is very good at watching performance on the other ones. It was analyzing this, I think, faster than Facebook was. So it'd been an interesting read. And their main message, I thought, the really interesting part, is why didn't the rest of the net go down? This was a tremendous load on the internet with everyone asking why it's down and loading on everything else. The net traffic went up by something like a factor of 30. And it didn't matter. The net was able to absorb it. And the point, it is free and not all run through a central place. And that's what's so valuable. It's rather like the story about Linux. They run in parallel, a lot of the same thinking. So it was an interesting demonstration for our 30th anniversary. Other news, in the same month, Chrome broke web features, but Google didn't tell. This affected a lot of computers, smartphones, etc. And again, we're not always running the show, and we're not even aware of some of what's going on until later sometimes. Now, some of the web features that they broke harmed some other things as well. And I may have an example of that in the security part down later. Also, FOSS News, Ubuntu is the most popular version of Linux on desktops. If you're running a desktop, a laptop, laptops are desktops in terms of what the operating system is thinking about. And Ubuntu 21.10 is coming out a week from now. There's betas out already for it and for 57 varieties of versions of it. It, in turn, is a version of Debian Linux, and Debian is one of a few major flavors that have a lot of copies out there. So it gets confusing at times, like that Linux for Starters guide, if you don't know about all of that. Fedora is another very popular Linux, and it just got declared a digital public good.
By whom?
By one of the good places. Jerry, are you able to say a little bit about that?
Not really. I read that, but again, I do favor Fedora. I think it is a more stable Linux than Ubuntu has been lately.
Okay. Jerry's a Fedora fan, and we hear about quite a few different versions here over the months of meetings. But I thought that deserved a plus, and you'll be able to click and read about it. And finally, a very different one. Artificial intelligence on Linux computers and a few other little tools. A lot of musicians, a lot of musical historians, a lot of people who wanted something, all got together and put together the computers and the musicians and finished
Apologies.
Beethoven's Unfinished Symphony. He had been working on it for 3 years as he was getting increasingly feeble and finally died. And he left just scrap worth of notes on where it was going, letters to friends, notes for himself. But they never found a major manuscript of it that was sitting around waiting to be picked up. They knew what was going on, and the 9 that he turned out were incredibly good. So everyone wished they could listen to Beethoven's 10th Symphony. Well, in a couple of weeks, you're going to be able to. And as soon as you get the link, you'll be able to listen to a piece of it as AI wrote it. Now, what does artificial intelligence mean in that sense? It's not just figuring out how to write music, it's much more than that. And that's not easy. It's figuring out how Beethoven wrote his music, looking at all the other symphonies and more. It's looking at how Beethoven was improving his music from symphony to symphony, what he did the same way and what he kept innovating, and what the directions were in which he was innovating it. And then the notes, the little clues he was telling friends about what he's changing on this one went into the computer. And then the notes on little scraps of themes that he was building on, the new themes, and a few earlier themes, because he tends to build, introducing a theme and then building on it the way he did before and mixing and merging it with the other themes he already had and doing a wonderful shuffling of his magic musical cards. AI learned how to do that too, with expert musicians suggesting listening, critiquing, and finally, when they couldn't tell if Beethoven had written this or not, then they set it to work completing the job. This is going to be quite a trip, and I'm looking forward to hearing the whole thing. Meanwhile, you're welcome to hear a section of it, and if we have time, we'll come back and we'll do that, but we've got a lot today. I may leave it for you to do tomorrow. What a treat, and look how far computers have come.
And it does sound very Beethoven-ish.
It better. That's what all the musical historians say. They say, this is this is one of the ways he would have done it. Definitely. So we've got 4 minutes of it coming real soon now. FOSS history, I've already been hinting at it. It's the 30th anniversary of the Linux kernel, the part that allows all the other parts to get hooked on. And a young fellow was already using computers in high school, and by the time he got to college, they weren't just using mainframes, mini computers. They had some personal computers just happening. And he said, gee, it'd be nice to get a free way to work on those the same way we can on the big computer when we're students. And he started doing it. And he finished doing it. He finished it enough so other people start using it and talk with him and build it further. That was in 1991, and 2 days ago today. Meanwhile, it's also the anniversary of the World Wide Web, which you know all about, the internet. And how did that all get pieced together? Well, it was about half a year earlier, and Tim Berners-Lee proposed something 2 years earlier, and then they were able to deliver and say, come and get it, hop on, we've already been testing it, it's fine. And very shortly, Linus Torvalds was airing out Linux with everyone else on that because it was the efficient, easy way to do it. And everyone else was able to grab onto it. and therefore a crowd was able to start playing, and both of them accelerated rapidly, as you know. So, wasn't all a coincidence. That timing is very interesting. Well, how about the anniversary of the web? I've got a couple of items for you. One is Tim Berners-Lee talking about how he did it, and he's talking about it at the 20th anniversary, when he still remembered a lot more of the details. So he'll explain the pieces, but this is the corker. From 1989, this is the sales pitch he presented to the group he was working for, CERN, a computer powerhouse for developing computer technology in Switzerland. And he was there, and he told them that he's got this idea, and they'd really like to finance this and support it in all ways and get it going. This is the sales pitch internally that 2 years later allowed people to start hopping on anywhere. And it's beautiful.
I have a question.
CERN is only incidentally in the computer business, like the NSF support for Internet 2 in the US, the nuclear physicists trying to understand what's inside of atoms with their high-speed atom smashers and the like, wind up needing big computers to do that.
That's quite right. And now they're going to learn how they can also patch a bunch of smaller computers, but better yet, how they can patch some of those biggest computers to be bigger than that. And yes, they're very interested in computer technology as a tool for what they're studying. And as a result, they've contributed a lot to the tool.
I have a question. We went to hear a presentation by Tim Berners-Lee early on, and I'm wondering if that was before he had something working or after.
You mean you and me, Joe, right?
Yes. At MIT. And
I'm going to do some research on that. I was already doing work with nuclear physicists on some measuring equipment. Again, a tool. My background is physics, but not that corner of it. And we were very anxious to go to that talk, I remember, a long time ago. I'm not going to tell you now, but maybe we'll fish it out from what we've got and report back on it. It wasn't.
I'll include an homage to Tim Berners-Lee in my second segment today.
Oh, good. And I'm sure that MIT has record of it. We'll have no problem tracing it down. Good. So there they are, sort of growing in parallel, and in part due to CERN. And here comes another one. It's the 25th anniversary of the Internet Archive, which some of you call the Wayback Machine. If you want to find something that's no longer on the web, you go to the people who copied it from the web before it went off, and thank goodness they're on the web. So you can get to them and then use them like a library to find a copy of what isn't on the web. It's not everything, but by golly, it's a lot of everything. It's an interesting read. And it started in 1996, at least it made itself available in 1996. And you can take a look at what it was then and what it is, whoops, not now, in 2046, 25 years forward into the future.
Chuckle.
What can that be about? You're going to have a good time looking. So this is 3 different items on it, and I think you'll find them useful. If you don't already use the Wayback Machine, I think you're going to try it out and find out it's useful for a lot of things. But how can they go forward 25 years? We'll have fun. by the way, you can put in your website and test it in that item. The first digital cipher machine. Bill is going to talk on that. And if this is a good time, Bill, I'll put you on.
All righty.
Bill Ricker has given this talk, and we'll have the talk online for you, but I hope he'll give a good overview of it right now. Oh,
Sure.
Bill.
You
Let's
want
see.
to unshare, dear?
Actually, I don't think he needs to. I think I can just grab it.
Yeah, I'll cut off my mic for a while.
Okay. Every September, the Boston Linux Unix Users Group, which Jerry's an officer for life in, it's a spin-off of the old Boston Computer Society Unix SIG, so it's actually older than Linux, has a cryptology meeting. Originally, it was a PGP key signing, and we had some sort of cryptography talk as the entertainment before the key signing. And I've been the usual speaker for that since I did a pinch hit assignment on very short notice in 2007 when our very interesting speaker had to defer a year. The notes are online, and so I had 15 minutes to prepare and a large stick of chalk. Luckily, back then, MIT classrooms were full of chalkboards. So there are my slides. That's what we did. And we've continued this up to the present. The last couple of years, we haven't had a key signing because we had to do it virtually. So there's kind of hard to sign people's keys if you don't hold their passport in your hands. I'm not going to sign a key based on you holding it up to the camera. Nope. But this year, my format was the same as always, cryptology news and review. Usually I do PGP, how to do a key signing, but last few years I've been presenting what are the alternatives to PGP, because it really is no longer suitable for use if it ever was. The cryptological significance of the year number 2021, history resources, and a continuation of last year's talk, which was the big scandal about the Swiss computer company that was in CIA's back pocket. And it turns out there was more to that story. Let's scroll forward. You'll be able to read all of my suggested alternatives. I've been slowly going over various eras of cryptology. That first one was classical ciphers, which I just did from memory because I've only been studying them for 40 years at that point. The transitional ciphers, transitional is whatever comes between classical and modern, right? In whatever typography or cryptology or car design or whatever. Modern is obviously what we have now. Instead of postmodern, we say post-quantum. We can discuss that another time. So the last couple of years, I've been discussing transitional. Enigma is the most famous transitional machine, but there were others. I've got a slide on why you should be worried about quantum computing and why you shouldn't be very worried about quantum computing. You can read that later. I will take a moment to discuss 2021. 2021 is the product of two small primes, two important cryptography machines of the prior century used wheels of size 43 and 47 to get a large period size. in their multiplications. And it's really kind of cool. So we just mentioned, this is a demonstration of the factorization of the wheel sizes of those two machines using the language formerly known as Perl 6, now called Raku. Yeah, you don't want to hear about that. New books. So the last rotor machine and the first digital machine these are the last rotor machines here. The first digital machine is what I did the previous year's talk on. There's wrong directory. See if I can pull up a picture of the first digital machine here. That's a linear shift back register, which those of you that have done any digital will have digital design will have run into. That's not what we want. Where's thought I could pull up the other PDF quickly here. I'm sorry. Oh, here we go. And to avoid shifting programs, I'm viewing my PDF in the Firefox browser locally instead of running off of the application. And this is the first digital cipher machine. Lid off, parts, pictures all courtesy of a private crypto museum on the web, a virtual museum, and the circuit board. I tried analyzing the circuit board. Some experts think I may have analyzed it wrong, but I got the part numbers right and I know what they do. Need to discuss this more with the guys on the collectors list. So those are my last 2 years history talks. And last year's slides you can see on the web already, and the videos on the web easily. Jerry has this year's video, and Dick has a link for this year's slides in their temporary location, and they'll show up on the blue site permanently later. That's the quick version. Back to you, Dick.
Good. It should be on now. Good. Thank you so much. That was a good synopsis, and we'll have more on that you can track from our published agenda once that's online.
So you want to go over to your...
Just a minute. Okay. As I struggle back, there we are. Excellent. I want to skip around a little bit here, just for variety. We talked about Tim Berners-Lee up here, getting the World Wide Web going. And interestingly, that's in the news as well as in the history. The original code he wrote to create the World Wide Web is now a $5 million cryptocurrency thing. That's not a thing. It's virtual, a non-fungible token. What does that mean? Well, like Bitcoin, I think we're still discovering what it means in practical terms. But he actually auctioned off only a copy of the code, a personal write-up of what it was about back then, and much like the ones you'll be seeing. And he put it up for auction in this kind of imitation currency, and got a little over $5 million for it. Now, I'm not sure what the person or group that bought it got, but what they didn't get was ownership of anything other than that copy. It's still in the public domain, just like Linux, and it hasn't changed that. I think this is just astonishing. I can't imagine what there was worth $5 million, other than a gamble that someone will think it's worth $7 million a little later.
Yeah, it's a signed collectible.
Yes.
It's a guaranteed limited edition of one. There's nothing stopping him from doing it again
So it's
next
not,
year, but this is a digital file which you can prove you have the original copy of as opposed to another copy of.
If something is fungible, it means you can put your hands on it. So, like a work of art or something like that. Well, if it's digital, it's not really there, so it's non-fungible.
and one can turn around and argue with, were Beethoven's symphonies fungible? You can touch the violin, you can touch the piece of paper with the score on it, but the music, I think we had non-fungible a long time ago.
That Sir Tim and the two little girls whose parents pushed them viral in youthful photos can manage to monetize the fame of their open source code or their image by fleecing suckers is the first good use for blockchain that I've heard of aside from GitHub.
Well, people are still arguing what the fallout will be, and the article I chose for that link is going to lead to a few other comments as well. I think it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of different perspectives on what happened there. So we'll find out. It's interesting. The $5 million will be donated to good work by Tim Berners-Lee. So that's a factoid I value highly. And that's it for now. There's a lot of fill-in on that one. It's really interesting. And how nice of it to fit in with the 25th anniversary. That's looking into the future, too, because very shortly there will first be a smash concert that people are lining up to get to, and it will be in Beethoven's hometown way back when, which is Bonn. It's in Germany, but it wasn't at the time. So in any case, that will be interesting. I'm sure the records and digital records and everything in between will be coming out right after, and wait for it. How does the internet work? Well, I gave you a really good starting book this month on Linux, and since we're celebrating the internet too, I thought I'd put in a really good article on that. And again, I'll just introduce it now and proceed, but it's significant. You may want to look at it. You may want to look at what it leads to. You may want to share it with others, so on. Now, Bill Ricker is coming in again, and that's because I wanted to talk about OpenStreetMap. I've talked about it several times, but it just keeps getting better. And Bill's point is don't just use it, build it. Everyone can help, just like Linux itself. So Bill did some, and he's going to talk about how he did it. Good time to switch.
Bill?
Bill, are you there?
Oh yeah, helps if I unmute.
Good.
And it didn't switch to following me.
Yes, it did.
Okay. Hasn't for me, but that's okay.
There's a picture of you and some other guy in an office.
Yes. And that other guy is Sir Tim Berners-Lee.
Ah.
We go in circles here and keep coming back.
He happened to be visiting in Cambridge when the local Boston area OpenStreetMap group was having a Back Bay mapping party with people walking around with GPSs. We headquartered in a coffee shop Apple repair place that Apple drove out of business because they were too close to the Apple store. So they didn't give them any parts. But it was a nice place to headquarter back when it was there. And so he and I were acting as home base for people with either their own GPSs or borrowed GPSs wandering around Back Bay looking for things that weren't on the map and should be. OpenStreetMap has both a wiki and a diary section that are updated by members of the project. To be a member of the project, you just click sign up. It's easy. And I have a couple of diary entries. One of them says, I noticed on Twitter that somebody said there was a new rotary in Boston. Well, it's not really a rotary, but it's sort of a rotary. It's more teardrop shaped. And it's within walking distance of me. I drove down because it's easier. Finding a place to park near there was the hard part. And I put it on the map. This rectangle shows the area of my changes and a list of my changes. And if we look here, you can see that I put in the sort of diamond shape. I didn't get the curve nice and round, and that's okay. For that new object by breaking this straight line apart into pieces. And I also changed a whole bunch of speed limits because they put in 20 mile per hour speed limits, even lower than the city's new standard 25 in this area. And I left a note visible to other mappers or anybody that just clicks notes down here that says there are probably more in that neighborhood that have been lowered than the ones that I knew to change. So let's look for them. And editing the map is actually quite easy. You can do it either with a desktop application or if you're logged in right in the web application. It's wandered off. I could just start grabbing things here and bending them if I felt they needed bending right here. And the system is full of presets so that it's easy to change things. You're guided to do the right thing. And we could do a longer how-to session. I'm not set up for that right now. I just wanted to show that it was a very simple, short expedition for me to go out, trace that not rotary, with my GPS, pull the GPS track into the editor, break the lines, move the lines, put it back together. It was a simple little afternoon project, and now anybody using this map, which, by the way, you can download into your Garmin GPS for free, gets that update. And I'd be happy to give more information another time, but I think that's probably all we have time for today.
That's a good chunk of it, followed up by your links. Bill, please send me the links again in the order they'll fit in the agenda, just
right.
So I have your benefit in addition to mine getting it right.
Sure.
And if you got a few extra links that are a good fit, that'd be interesting. I just happen to have a Garmin GPS. If you know a way to inject it into a Bolt EV, I'd like that too.
Ooh, I don't know about that.
Well,
and suggest a time that you would like to give a how-to session.
ooh, I'll supply the car.
No, not that for the editing.
That's good. Oh, that's a good idea. And in addition to thanking you, I want to mention Bill's been doing this over at the Boston Linux and Unix group, and that's BLU.org. And people might want to get on their online meetings as well. So thanks again. Let's see, where am I? This is interesting, but I'll save it for another time. Hypnotics. And Wild Me, I think, could save. We'll come back to it if we have time. See what people are interested in. I'm circling back to hot software. And these are items that can be read. I don't have to say a lot about them, but PDF to go allows PDF images are tight, but you can't do a lot with them at the other end. It's sort of taking a photograph of your writing in its most typical usage. And so you can't later edit it, take pieces of it, use it in the manner that's so useful in FOSS. PDF to go straddles that very nicely. You can hop right in and look at the PDF and modify it. So I think it's interesting. You'll have a link to it. FOSS alternatives to Microsoft OneNote. Well, there's a lot of people who think OneNote is quite good and don't know about free alternatives. So there's one applied step in the general concept. You don't have to stick with proprietary software. It's generally true, and here's one experiment in that direction for the newbies. This last one is kind of interesting also. A scanned PDF file might have a lot of dirt on the paper. It might have text that's fading from an old typewriter ribbon or from a typewriter ribbon that's gotten old on the paper since it was put on.
Paper that's yellowing.
In any case, we expect text to be where it is and where it isn't. No grayscale, no in between. And that's not what you get. So here's a way to get to it from that. It's not the only way. And I think it suggests several methods. Personally, I'd reach for my favorite photo program, Photox. That's Photoxx. And I do it with that. But here's some other tools and some other approaches. And I think it's the approach for getting clean from not quite clean, usable from lookable but not usable. It can be useful. So those are the hot software items I picked, other than the ones we've already been featuring. And I'll go on to hardware. All of these, again, will have good articles attached. We had a problem here at Miller Microcomputer Services in our home. And the problem was, back before COVID, we had a lot of people over, business and pleasure, who wanted to be online while they were here. And we gave them a guest link through our Wi-Fi router and our modem and into the internet, separated from ours, a guest account that didn't see our account, just worked in parallel.
And people couldn't get into our files.
Right. Our stuff remained secured at the same time as they could use the system. One day it stopped. We didn't know for a long time because coronavirus came along in the middle and we didn't have visitors here. We did things in different ways. But not that long ago, we had some guests stay over for a weekend again, ever so carefully, lots of masks, and had a good time, except they went to hook up to our guest Wi-Fi. We hadn't changed a thing, and it wasn't working. And we couldn't get it working.
Well, what wasn't working was that the browser said, this is unsecured, and I'm not going to let you on it.
And that hadn't been going on before. And we didn't think it was a real good idea either. So we gave them a cable to hook into for the time being and separated from our other computers. And in the meantime, we went to do some debugging. It took a bit of work to find out, but Jill will explain what happened because it's interesting. And then I'll come back and explain what we did about it.
Well, what we did was it was a Linksys/Cisco router, about 8 years old, maybe less. But anyway, we called Linksys support line. And after going through a huge amount of, quote, debugging, unquote, they finally said, oh, yeah, well, you can't, it's blocked because it uses a port, and that old a router does not allow you to change the port number. The port number is hardwired in.
And this is going to go for a lot of routers. So we were stuck. Our router was still working fine for us, but we thought it'd be nice to get one that worked for guests as well. Again, ever optimistic that we'll have guests again. So, in fact, we do now and again. So we went shopping. And what we shopped for might interest others in the same pickle, or people just looking for a good, inexpensive router for basically home use with multiple computers on at once, not tangling with each other or slowing each other down. And for our business, it's the same arrangement. But for a big business where, say, 200 people are leaning on it, I think you might want something more heavy duty. They cost more. What's going on out there is interesting. What they're trying to sell for home use this year goes for typically around $100. Go to the stores and you'll see the pitch. If you want one for business, they want you to go something for $200 to $400, or a mesh of a lot of them working side by side, doing some of the work together and most of it separately so they can share the load. Now, for a typical home installation, even in a well-provisioned area, you're not going to get super fast fiber optic connections, and you don't need them. They're not going to do anything useful for most users of most equipment. So we're in that category. We do want fast internet downloads, and we get them, but we probably wouldn't if we were doing them on 20 computers at once. This gadget can handle more than 20 online. It can handle up to 128 online in theory, but you'd have to split them down one way or another. And at some point along that curve, if they were working heavily on the internet, not just taking little bits now and again.
Gaming, for instance.
If they were all gaming full time with 4K video displays, I think you'd see the drag. For normal uses, no sweat. And this is a well-recommended, currently available Wi-Fi router. It's the TP-Link Archer 6. And they've just come out with an Archer 7 more recently. It does not add anything you particularly want, but the Archer A6 turns out to have 3 different versions. And at least the third version is physically a whole different unit. This is strange. It looks different. So you can find out about that too. We're talking about the very latest release of version 2. We got that one because it was available quickly. The version 3 also only became available in the USA, but it's been out in Europe and some other places for over a year. So we were at the time constrained to version 2, and we're quite happy with it. It's very good. And I expect it'll be getting even less expensive as version 3 starts getting fanned out. I know I can get them from 1 or 2 mail order places right now. They just hit within the week. So the one I'm talking about is version 2.8 for the firmware, and it's a version 2 physical modem of this model. And you can read the review of it in what I'm supplying for a clipping. And very simply, it'll supply a big handful of users at full speed on typical residential area connections. And then some. It'll go faster than that too. It is a gigabit router, and it has 5.0 and 2.4 options aboard on it, and it'll automatically split stuff off to the slower end as it gets heavily loaded, or it'll keep sharing on the fast one until it flinches, or you can set particular users to particular speeds. So someone who's using it a lot doesn't have to be slowing you down on the very same router. It's quite nice. It's not overly complex. Installation, fairly straightforward, and there's good videos on that, and written stuff you'll find right in what I provide here. So it's just one of many that are out there, but the price is $50 list, not $100. $40 online in a lot of places. And I think you're about to watch that price go down toward 30. We picked one up for about $33, and maybe you can too. We went to eBay to do our shopping for it, and it worked well. So you've got the information on it, and some of you maybe will be putting it to good use. There you go. While we're on hardware that isn't quite the computer, I thought this month I'd feature a few other things as well. I'll do it fast. You can read about it later. But Ubuntu is available on phones. It's also available on computers that you can buy new with it. And our company, for that matter, can sell you an inexpensive refurbished computer, factory refurbished, not by us. And then we put the Linux on it. So there's a lot of ways to get Linux on a computer ahead of time rather than to learn how to do it. But on phones, I think it's more unusual. There are now phones delivering with it. And you can now put it on your phone if it's one of a number of pretty popular lines of phones, not just single models. And you can read about that here. That was an Ubuntu project that they set aside. Other people picked it up and turned it into at least 2 projects at this time. And they're making headway in a lot of places, and they got a few things they still like to deliver in other corners, and you can read about it. Interesting. Linux on inexpensive smartwatches all over the place. And I'm playing with a few of them. I've had for, I think, a couple of years, an ID205L. What's the brand? What's the name? That's up to you. If you buy an order of at least 500 from the factory, it'll be any brand and name you want. and they get out that way. So they have a lot of brands and names, but then you don't know how to buy them from other less expensive sources. The watch I bought for $13 online was the same IDL205L that is under other brand names for much more money. $50 to start, you'll probably find it for more than that. So knowing the factory designation number is golden. And of course, they're all coming from the same Chinese factory, like so many of our netbooks are, and everything else. So that's a secret number. Once you have it, you can start looking for it. You'll find most of the folks that advertise on eBay, for example, include that number, because then they know they'll get extra customers that don't know what they're selling by any other clue. So you'll find it works. I like the watch. It's good. Its battery lasts for more than a week by far. So if I charge it once a week when I'm doing a main backup on our computers, it's easy to do and we know when. And doesn't take long, a little over an hour to charge it. So I like it. It has a lot of things on it in the way of features, but not that many compared to your Apple smartwatch. And it isn't going for $200 to $400 either. It's going for $13. Well, one thing it didn't do, it gave heartbeat, and it gave blood pressure. But a new watch came along that offered all of those. I think a better display for displaying those things. They both hook up with smartphones, so you can see them better anyway. And this one, the A26, had blood dissolved oxygen level, which I thought would also be getting good as we're getting older, and heart attacks and minor things suggesting heart attacks can be nipped in the bud if you have something to look.
Well, plus it's a early symptom of COVID. So
This is a valuable feature now.
your oxygen level is low.
And I thought, gee, I kind of wish my watch had that. And then I saw this one come out with that feature aboard as well. And I said, good year to know about that. And I can afford to find out, can't I? At $12 was my cost. It might cost you 15 to 20, depending on how creative and lucky you are looking. But I got it through eBay, and I got it. Well, a word of warning. I've now got two of them and two charging cables, and I can't make them go. Listen close. This may affect you, it may not. The first one I got was shipped to me, seal not broken on the box from the factory. So I'm told, and so it looked. And when we opened it, it had the pieces we needed, but I put them together and went to charge it. It didn't charge. The charging unit has USB standard at one end to plug into your computer or adapter or whatever. And at the other end, it has a big fancy clothespin that grabs the front and the back of the
Watch.
actual watch. So it's kind of like a big letter C that's wrapping around the top and bottom of the watch face and leaving you able to see the center. And up in the top of that C, it's got the connectors to go into the contacts at the top back of the watch. And basically you squeeze the two ends together at the other side and it opens like a clothespin. And you get it nudged into the contacts and then close it and it's clamped on. If it conducted electricity, this would have been perfect. But somewhere between it's getting made and my plugging it in, it looked real good. And we had nothing to charge the watch with. We got back to them instantly, but instantly was something like a week after they shipped it to us. And darned if they hadn't shipped the rest of the lot to other people by then. I don't know if the other people are complaining or not, but they could not get me a replacement cable. And they said, well, we're really sorry. Suppose we give you $2 credit instead. And I said, let me see if I heard you right. You sent us something that can't work. And instead of taking it back or making it work, you want to give us $2 to look at a dead watch? I don't think so. And they said, oh, it didn't have to be just credit in their store. They could actually credit me with $2 on account. I'd have it for any place on the eBay. For me, that makes sense for $2, but doesn't make sense for the purchase. I said, I don't think so. They said, how about $5? Or we'll take it back and refund everything. I thought it over and I said, well, I've got the watch. It looks really good. And they were having trouble delivering them. A lot of people were ordering them at the time in many places on eBay. The $60 offer of the same A6, they had them in stock, but the inexpensive end were selling out real fast. I wasn't the only one who figured this out. But I knew something else. I said, I'll take the $5. I took the $5 credit and I ordered a replacement cable. The replacement cable took 2 weeks to come in, but it only cost $3 delivered. When it arrived, I plugged it on, and I got good news and bad news. I got a little indication that it was attached. Physically, it looked like it probably ought to work, but It was not the same shape. It was a shape that cut off more of the face. It was not the same adapter. Theoretically, it was. And it wasn't charging the watch. It was lighting it up. It looked like it was going to charge it, but getting to a full charge seemed impossible. Back to the drawing board. I went back to eBay and found another one they could send me, approximately the same price. I think it might have been $15 or $14. And it had a cable and it had a watch. I didn't really want either. I just wanted my stuff to work. But I couldn't even test it without getting a cable that worked. And it came in quite quickly. And when I plugged it in, it worked. Charged fast enough, worked. Then I charged in the old watch. It charged fast enough and it worked. Message: the two other cables had been faulty. The watch was not. Now I had two watches, one working cable. I thought I was pretty happy. Maybe Joe wanted the other watch. Maybe we sell it to someone else, El Cheapo, because we had it. It was here now, and we could demonstrate that it worked. But a day later, I had second thoughts. It said it had 25% of its charge one day after I charged it. I charged the other one all the way, now that I knew it could do it, and it did the same thing. And they just don't hold a charge. Neither of them. Is it the new cable still not up to snuff? Is it two identical watches that charge all the way, but they both have bad batteries? I don't know, and I don't care. So I'm not recommending the 826 until someone else can recommend better on a reliable, regular basis from ordering them. When I went online looking on comments about them, a lot of other people were complaining they couldn't make a charge or it wouldn't hold a charge. I'm inclined to think they're lemons, but I have a limited sample to talk about from different sources. Take it or leave it. I'm back to the ID 205L, and I'm waiting for a chance to buy something like the 826 where they can tell me it holds a charge, and I see that it does when I get it. But the watches are swell. I see no personal need and no need for most people to go buy an Apple Watch or an imitation Apple Watch that's reaching for more. Between that and its ability to talk to my smartphone, I've got a powerhouse on my wrist, does what I want, except for the ones that can't charge. There you go. On the subject of other smartwatches, what do you know? You can buy open source smartwatches. Now you can put the Linux on them. They often come with Linux on them and an invitation to try more. And I've got an article on that as well. That's even fancier than I wanted. I think their typical price is around $35 to $60. There's a few choices, probably all still out there at the moment. So you'll have clues on that as well. Very different from our usual hardware talks. Let me see. Computer, privacy, freedom. Have we got stuff on that? How to protect the digital economy. I think you want that for a must-read. If we don't all get blasted off the face of the earth by the climate change and the extreme weather conditions that it's bringing, and the food crop failures that it'll be bringing for some crops, and et cetera, et cetera. Assuming we're sticking around, our economy is doing a lot of damage in some ways that people had better get a handle on as it changes to digital. And that's a good overview of it. The next one is on one specific. A bad solar storm could cause an internet apocalypse. Well, yes, it can. It'll do a lot more than what Facebook just did to itself and a lot of other users. And we're going to get a lot of bad solar storms as one of the side effects. So,
Side effects of what?
Of climate change and the regular solar storms that we used to get. They're picking up in rate, in number we'll get in 10 years. So this is one to keep an eye on, and there's an article on that. Not well documented yet, like my A26 watches. You can argue over how much you know from the limited data you've got at this time. But there's people making a good case for it, not the alarmist types. And not the politicians who have something to gain from it. So there you have that. Unattended Linux upgrades. Good, bad, indifferent. Well, if you're not watching them, you may have more trouble having ones you know you can rely on, that you can trust. Watch out for that. But with problems coming up more often in the way of malware that needs a patch now, unattended Linux upgrades make a lot more sense than they used to. You'll want them quick before you can get in trouble from some third party taking advantage of new malware that went around. So Linux is usually the fastest to patch on that, at least the popular ones. And we pay attention and we upgrade quickly, not unattended. But here's a debate on that seesaw. Should you or shouldn't you? It's got some good arguments both ways and a quandary, what to do about it. Linus, not Linus, but not Linux, but Linux with a Y-N-I-S, is a security audit tool. I think it might be quite interesting to some of us, and you can take a look also. If someone wants to report on it in detail, another meeting, I'd love that. I put it out as a challenge if someone would take it upon themselves to check it out and do it. Linux Malware Detect, aka LMD, aka Maldet, is worth a look in the same sense. And I haven't mentioned Microsoft much in all these things up till now. Facebook, yes. Chrome, yes. But which is Google, of course. But let's give Microsoft some equal time. A misconfigured release of their Power Apps exposed 38 million records online. People who thought they had stuff they wanted to keep secure, and poof, it's out there, and it's out there in great numbers now. Bad news. If you use it, change your password, read about it, see if it's appropriate for you, but worry about it if you play with things Microsoft. 15 years of unstable Google messaging apps. Read it. Apple. Oh, we don't have to worry about Apple. Well, yes, we do on several counts, including some similar ones. But this particular one is about a plan they've recently had to put a backdoor into the encryption, and it's so you can get all the benefits of Apple, including vulnerability to other things. So you want to read about this one. They have gotten major flack on it just in the last couple of weeks. And I believe they just announced either that they are canceling the plan or that they are shelving it until they think more about it. They're not going ahead with it as they had planned. So that'll be an interesting one. And it got a lot of input from non-Apple users as well. You can read all about it. T-Mobile, a major internet service provider, data breach, 100 million stolen customer records. There's a competition going on here, and we're the guinea pigs. So that's one to read about also. And finally, Realtek has a remote code execution flaw in many routers, in IoT gear, and in cameras. Oh my gosh, all over the place. You'll want to read about that one. I see one that's not on my list here. I think it should have been in the news, and I think I'll paste it on after the fact and tell you about it now. It started, I forget, either half a year ago or a year and a half ago, something like that. But what happened was a major malware item put down the internet for some, and then they got it back with limited service. They could use email, but all the capabilities of the internet were not there. A Pennsylvania or Georgia, I forget which, hospital had a lot of internal use of the internet and Wi-Fi, and it was affected by the breakdown.
Georgia.
When the breakdown shut down everything, they got shut down. When it went back on, it was only a partial fix, and they didn't find out for a while. And when they found out, they decided to not publicize the fact. It was working on everything they thought they needed, so they kept being fully open to patients. The COVID had begun, and hospitals were getting stressed, and they argued that turning off their hospital or turning off the people that would come to it would be worse for people than leaving it open, not publicizing the problem, and help taking up the slack for lots of people. Well, that's under legal question now on a lot of levels. Everybody's suing everybody else. What started it was a woman coming in to her local hospital with the obstetrician she was planning to use, who worked at that hospital, and she came in and they gave the usual test before they do a delivery to make sure that the baby doesn't require a cesarean operation instead. And the usual reason, it's rare, but it happens, is the umbilical cord got tangled around the fetus neck. And when they take the baby out, they're essentially going to hang it while they're taking it out. There's a test for that. They ran the test. It measures the fetal heartbeat. And if it's steady and not affected in ways they know how to ID, they don't opt for cesarean. They assume it's going to be normal. They assumed it. They were wrong. They saved the baby anyway, but for only 9 months before it died, after it had been quite ill, quite impacted. And that's what it died from. The obstetrician, upon delivering it, emailed to the Hospital Nursing Staff Administration and said, why wasn't I notified? Why was I told it had a clean signal? The answer turns out to be that the piece of equipment doing that measurement was working fine, except for that corner of what it puts together for its signal. It wasn't getting that piece, and it was transmitting the clean part of the signal. For 8 days, they hid the information after they knew about it. And because of some routine gross mismanagement in the hospital, they've got a family that's suing. They've also got an obstetrician that's suing. It affected, I think, her reputation. They've also been suing the maker of the hardware. The suer of the maker of the hardware is suing somebody else. There are things going back and forth, in and out, a lot of money involved, and a lot of reputations on the line at a hospital that's not supposed to do things like that. But what do you know? It had a perhaps acceptable reason for doing things like that. The reason our politicians and our CIA, et cetera, often use, because spilling it will cause a bigger problem, either to them or to us or to some third party. And we don't get told a lot of the facts as a result. Often our FOSS information channels inform us a lot better, a lot sooner. And this is one where they dearly wish they'd had someone in there doing that. They had been notified about the problem, but it hadn't gotten through to the right place. And when it got through to one place, they decided not to spread the news further. So it's not your problem. It wasn't your town. It wasn't your hospital. It wasn't your kid's life. But it's a real good example of how a problem out on the internet can have really unforeseen third-party costs in all kinds of directions. And we all have things like that in our house or in the places we rely upon when we go for specialty service. Which brings me back to the one we mentioned briefly. Where was it? Under hardware, no doubt. No, it wasn't. There was one coming along there I mentioned. We'll talk about it later. I don't know. Find it later. Anyway, we'll add that hospital fiasco because it fits right in on the other end of the chain for these items. By the way, the TP-Link Archer A6 Wi-Fi router I mentioned comes with level 3, PA3, for the encryption and WPA3, sorry, thank you, of the encryption levels that handles routinely, transparently, if you don't want to do something special. You just say that's the one you'd like. You should, apparently. So I'll add it there too. Let's see. Okay. I think we're ready for some FOSS fun. And Dennis, are you on today? Good. Dennis, are we going to hear about penguins or trains?
I haven't looked at the trains, so it'll be pigeons, not penguins.
Oh, I knew that. Sorry. Somebody said penguins and I hooked on it. Okay, we'll add the information and your link after you send the link the way you want it for the final. Or if you like the one you sent earlier, I'll use that. And Dennis is our games expert. He always has something good to offer. I'm going to, after that, offer a brief intro to the other item that I had in here, and I've got a comment or two about desktop wallpaper. Let's start with Dennis and tell us all about it? Can you switch yourself on and go?
Yep, he's on.
Good. Here we go.
You can see my screen? Good.
I can, yes.
All right. The game I stumbled across recently is called Pigeon Ascent. The concept behind the game is that you are managing this pigeon and you're trying to take down the pigeon god so that you can become your pigeon can become the next pigeon god.
Isn't that our problem? Okay.
I mean, it's just an awesome concept. So you can enter in whatever you want for your pigeon's name, and then you click fight. You have some stat points to increase your pigeon's abilities. You have some money where you can buy different things. Most of these are for like healing, so they're not stuff that you need right away since you haven't been hurt. So we could go over and increase various abilities. And you can click fight, and you get to pick which of the pigeons you want to fight. They'll give you the amount of gold that you'll get if you win. And you get to see the stats of the pigeon. And it has all sorts of different types of pigeons in here. So this one, for example, you see it with the backward cap on its head. Now, this is called like an auto battler. So you don't have to do anything during the fight. You just go over and start it, and it will go over and run the fight for you. So we won. So now you don't get healed and you don't get your food after the fight. So you'll have to decide if you want to buy those to back up. One thing you can do as well is you can go into the fight and take a look to see what is coming up. 5, so you're going to have a really high attack if you want to take that one down. And so let's see. We'll fix up our abilities. And then we'll go fight this sink pigeon. Because, you know, pigeons combined with kitchen sinks, it makes sense. What do we have? And you've got a wizard one up here. Now they have these other items in here. So for example, we could do an orange, which heals you 5 hunger. So that's your food. And then gives you a bonus to your defense stat. So you get 1 extra defense. We'll just go take this guy on. A night pigeon of some kind. And as you go along, your pigeon evolves. Let's see here. What do we got for fight? Now they've got some additional items in here that I don't know what they do. So you can get a wyvern wing but you can only use it if you have enough strength, and I don't know what it ends up doing since it's never done anything when I've used it. Oh, I think it actually did something this time. So I've evolved into some dragon-like pigeon this time. Let's go over. Oh. And so now he got up to the pigeon god. So I defeated the pigeon god, and now my pigeon is the new pigeon god.
All hail Dennis.
That particular game is from a Ludum Dare. They go over and do twice a year. They give you either 48 hours or 72 hours to make a game. And you have to make it from scratch, or, well, you're allowed to use tools and stuff. So that one was done using Godot.
Well, thank you. Let's see. Am I coming through now? Somebody put their thumb up if they're hearing me. Good. Okay. And let's see. Back I go to hither. And okay. Just I'm full screen. Do you have it cut down? Yeah, you do.
Well,
Okay,
that's
good.
because
All
I have
right,
the chat
no
open.
problem. Okay. Desktop wallpaper. I think you just saw mine showing. We had it early on for the people that were here early on. And the desktop wallpaper is in honor of the 30th anniversary of Linux. And I've given you a link where you can look at it online and where you can download it. But up where it is at the Linux Foundation, they under each of the images, the thumbnail for each image, it says download. Curiously, when I clicked on download, I found that they were giving me a slideshow, not downloading. I found a way to download them, and I downloaded them. And then I wanted them to put them into the Variety slideshow. My favorite one is Variety. And I wanted to put them all in one folder and have it randomly select from the four. Sounded like a piece of cake. But they were still the wrong size. They were a little too small, a lot bigger than the thumbnail, but they weren't shaped quite right for my display either. I thought about it for a while and picked up Photox, my favorite program for photographs. And I thought I'd just use it and do some work on it. Well, surprise, I couldn't even grab the images. They were showing where I had downloaded them, but they weren't opening. And it turned out they'd put some property on it for a privacy lock, so you could look, but you couldn't change. I had to change the size. And I didn't know how to get loose from it. And Jill took a look, and she didn't know how to get loose from that lock they had on each image. They looked like they ought to work, and they did not. We did solve the problem, as you can see. And what's more, after trying some long, circuitous things that did not work, it turned out to be way under a minute per slide to finish the whole job. I'm not going to tell you how. I'm going to issue a challenge. You can download them too. You've got the link now. And the challenge is to see if you can figure a way to quickly convert them to full screen size, or to some size other than they are, and sharp. And when you've got it, we'll see how many people had answers and whether they were all the same answer or not. Tune in next month. That's the challenge.
And Algot says Linux Foundation, open source.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I think they did it by accident, just like the download button wasn't quite working directly, but you could download them. So I think I'll tell them about it, but not until at least a week from now, so other people can come into the hospital for their babies in the meantime. This one is less serious, and otherwise, you can't play the challenge. You need to pick up the one they have there now. So download it tonight if you're one of the people that wants to play the game, and let's see how many different solutions people get. We'll compare notes next time. I have one more thing. I'm going to introduce it very quickly, but it's wonderful. I've never had animals fighting each other, except for kangaroos in a boxing ring, to my knowledge, except for virtual ones. But I think most of us know what you have to put under a Christmas tree along with the presents. And that's a little nothing electric train set where the train is going around and around underneath. Remember back when? Well, they've gone virtual too. And this one is fairly fascinating. you could make a little circle around a Christmas tree. Or B, you could make a whole railroad line for Boston or London or wherever you happen to be. Or you could say, yeah, I want trains, but look, it's a harbor. Why don't we have boats? And they could move too. Hey, we could put in an airport and have planes that take off land and fly all over the place. Hey, hey, all these things we can do. Car traffic? So now, wait a minute. Where do you put them? Not under a Christmas tree. You can create a whole town or a whole state, or you can go online and work with other people on projects where they're doing that and help build it and run it. Or you can download one that's mostly done and play around with it yourself. Or. Let's take a look. So I want a virtual train set first. No, I won't go there. The virtual train set link is going to take you to a good article that tells you how to set it up on your computer. And by the way, you can do that on any standard computer. You don't have to be in Linux, Windows, or Mac. And you're going to do it by using OpenTTD. The original TTD is also getting pretty old. Don't know if it's 15 years or 25, but it's something like that. And it was a for sale program you bought at stores, and it was called Transportation Tycoon Deluxe. And like the birds that were just having it off with each other, you could turn it into a money project. You could invest in buying another train or another station and become a tycoon. It was so good that a version of it then appeared in open source. And of course, all the people who were playing it wanted to add things. You can add skyscrapers, you can add farms, you can add railroad stations, you can add wharfs for the boats, tunnels, you got it, snow, whatever, fall colors, the foliage. This is the railroad set you never even imagined you could have. I went to the one at the World's Fair on Long Island just before World War II. I was tiny, and I still remember it vividly. This is on that scale. And that one also had boats, by the way. But that was a huge, real 3D effort at Fake. This is right on your screen anytime you want it, Fake. And let's take a quick look at
Didn't we
something.
see one actual one in Pittsburgh a few years ago? You have some photos of it?
I'm not sure.
Actual.
I'm not sure. If you can come up with a link, I'll toss it on. But let's look at the story. The story linked to something I can demo. Oh, but I didn't like it. I'll open the other one. And having opened the other one, maybe I think that worked. Maybe it didn't. I'll go find my other windows. And yeah, good. Here I am. This is OpenTTD based on simulation. Very strangely, in all the good stuff in here, I have not found a good video demo. That surprises me. I have, however, found it has a little depth for other things. These are betas you can download. They have a nightly on this for the latest beta. People are always adding to it. And I didn't want that. I wanted, maybe it's the about. Let's see. Features. maps up to 64 times bigger than the original. You can have a multiplayer mode for, I think they mean countries, not companies here, but up to 255 players at once playing or watching. So you can just go in and watch. All kinds of support. Auto rail, road build tool. I think they mean auto/rail build tool. Oh, they mean an auto rail road build tool, I think. But so for the boats and things also. Multiple trees on one tile. You don't want to build a forest tree by tree. You can understand that. And you can bribe the town authority as one of the money games you can do. I guess they're pretty realistic. And this is a stunner of a game. You can make it easy to use. There's stuff for that. It's got all kinds of interface features, including color-coded vehicle profits, colorful newspaper you can get about it, about how big you are in the transportation business. It's got everything. And if it doesn't, wait till tomorrow. But the operating systems were all, hey, I thought that was going to scroll down to further. Try this one. Here we go. Here we go. None of these, to my knowledge, leads directly to a video. I was looking for one fast. But some of them are impressive enough on their own to give you, here's why you don't want to download trees one by one, see? You can instead download what they call tiles and use those. And I will go out. It's got probably over 100 servers you can hop onto and see what they're doing, or eventually learn how to participate. You can download the program and play with it on your own computer, or you could network a few computers and play with it at home or at work or whatever. Lunch hour, guys. And let me see. I had a better place to hop to shortly.
Where's the little video that you showed?
I'm going to find it now. With a bit of luck. I have to hop over to that other page. Whoops, sorry. Let me stay here for the moment. Hop to a different work. By the way, for those who don't know, I'm now showing all four of those wallpapers, showing two of the wallpapers live working. It's actually one of them at a time showing in two workspaces. In Linux, I easily divide my computer into separate workspaces to do different things. I'm going up to the one where I can select something else, and then I'll come back to the one I was in. This is the one I want to be in, and here we go. Demo 1, and back I go. Going to look a lot like this. I'll open my screen. We could do without the sound on it. And look around, guys. This has a window, and he's doing work in the window. That's a tile. You can pick up tiles and turn them into scenery, rights of way, all kinds of things. And here he's picking up an existing town. This is more than under the Christmas tree. And he's going to do a little work on it. Picking some options. Dennis, take note. Next month, Dennis, this is your mental reminder section reminding you next month. This is a good one. And looking at the names, I have a feeling this is supposed to be in England. I could be wrong. But he's adding pieces. He's setting it up. I'm going to move way ahead because this is a 12.5-minute intro to how somebody sets things up on it. Not the one in writing that I also gave you. So we'll hop ahead a ways and look. Here he is, and he's still building stuff. I want him to start running stuff. Here he's got a train and a station in there. And I think he's about to, and smokestacks are already blowing smoke. And train one, he's sending the end of the orders for train one. I think I picked a good place. He's going to do a test run on his half-built system. Here he is setting up where it's going to go to. And there's the right of way, I guess. Or is that water?
That's water.
That's weird water. I think it gets smoothed off later.
Okay.
Oh, he needs a depot for it to go to, huh?
Yeah.
And which way do you face the depot, too?
Built
All that
bridge.
stuff. There's a bridge. I hope I'm near where he tests it. I think I am. There's a harbor. What do you know? Water coming into the harbor. Whoa! Laying track is faster in the game. New vehicles. A steam engine? And other people may have created these and pooled them as part of this project. You can design an airplane and name it after yourself. And they'll convert it into many languages. Now it's got a track. Test me, test me.
It's got two trains.
Second train coming up. There's a train moving already. See it?
That must be his steam engine train.
Guess so. And so on and so forth, as big as you want for all practical purposes. And there's servers to handle what you can't handle. I think I'll stop it there, but move on to the last link I had, which is more. And go back to look at it. When I say more, this is only about this program, and half of them are in the program, half are talking about it, and oh boy, is there more. There's lots more. Have fun. Dennis, take note. Everyone have a very good month to come. And now we will open for any questions that people may have. And people who help will stick around for a little bit to see if they have a good way to help. Keep your sound off unless you think it's your turn to talk, and I will go back to work to unblock. Back to Jitsi. Should be in here somewhere, I think.
NatickFOSS right in the middle there somewhere.
Here we are.
Hello.
It's getting there. It is.
And now you want to stop sharing.
Oh, I think. Which one? What are you talking about?
Well, see, this is you.
Oh. Where? In here?
I don't know. How do you stop sharing?
I think it's this one. You've been here a long time. Yeah, there we go.
The share button will turn into an unshare
So-
button if you re-click it.
Oh, I'm supposed to open. Oh, there it is. Okay. Hopefully we're all back.
Nope.
What do you see
I
something?
think you turned it back on.
I thought I did. Ah!
Stop
what do we want?
sharing.
Can you do-
Isn't there a control D or something that you stop sharing?
Thank you.
But it's not in the dash.
You're right. I've had it. I'm too tired at this
It's the
point.
button to the left of the chat button and to the right of the camera button.
I think he stopped sharing. I don't see anything.
I'm seeing is sharing.
Something I'm thinking.
I'm seeing.
Got it.
Yeah, now we're back.
That was simple.
Computers
Okay,
make
are
our
there
lives
any
easier.
questions from anybody on anything? Comments?
Is your voice on?
Thought it was, yeah.
Yeah.
His was.
I am thinking that everyone is happy and that we will have a good evening. If you owe me any clues for posting, send them along, and I'll be doing the posting, and I'll send around a notice to the whole list once it's online.